Yes, hello and good evening, and welcome to another episode of Cúilín Media here on this beautiful Thursday evening. It is me, Liam White, here alongside our regular guests, Matthew Hurley, the Gaelic Statsman, Seamus Brady from Onclehe, and Aaron Prendergast from Gaelic Games Fan TV. It is a massive weekend in the Gaelic Games circles. We have LGFA finals, we have finals in Camogie, and we also have the Ulster Football Championship final to look forward to get into. We're looking forward to having the comments come in this evening. Looking forward to seeing what your opinions are as well. So I suppose we're going to start with yourself, Matthew. Big weekend ahead. You're looking forward to the games this weekend. Which one stands out to you the most?
Yeah, Liam, it's going to be a very interesting weekend. I would say, I think the game that stands up to me probably is St. Finbarr against Athenry in the Camogie, simply because there is a piece in the Southern Star that I taught to Kate Wall. Actually, she's originally from Kilbrittain in West Cork. A lot of connections obviously down there. Obviously the Callans involved there as well with the Bars, and they've done so well this season, and hopefully they can get over the line against Athenry. The final in the LGFA is very interesting, considering Ergnat look at the results anyway during the week. They've blitzed nearly everybody, and their defence is pretty solid. I think they've only conceded a goal or at least one goal in only 2 games this year, possibly 3. I think only against St. Paul's and against Kilmacud Crokes. So they've been very, very strong defensively. But then Kilkerrin, going for 5 in a row, 53 wins in a row, they're going for as well in all competitions, which is absolutely sensational. And then you obviously have the Kilcoo and Scotstown game, which is interesting enough. You would say Kilcoo are favourites considering what Kilcoo did to them last season, and it could be a repeat of last year indeed. But yeah, looking forward to the games this weekend. Obviously, there is only 9 games across all the grades, very low amount. But I suppose, as we always say, the importance is ramping up.
Absolutely, the importance is ramping up. It's getting to that time of the year where the Christmas trees are being put up, but teams are still out training in the cold and blizzard as well. Seamus, I suppose we have an Ulster final to look forward to after the drama of a couple of weeks ago of the game between Newbridge and Scotstown being cancelled. We finally are getting around to it this weekend. Kilcoo versus Scotstown in the Ulster Football Championship. It was a fairly one-sided game last year, but maybe this year we could see a changing of the guard. What would you think?
Well, yeah, with that one, I mean, the last day out against Newbridge, the thing that was questioned a lot about Scotstown, in previous games, in previous years, everything like that, was their mettle when it came to the Ulster Championship, especially that game against Kilcoo last season, where Kilcoo kind of went to town on them, scored 5 goals. A lot of people were questioning their mettle, to really do it against the top dogs in Ulster. And the reality is, if you were paying attention to how Newbridge had gone back-to-back in Derry, the way that they'd done it, myself and Matthew, we both, and I stand by the predictions, tipped that Newbridge could be everything to undo the Scotstown train. They could be everything to derail that train, because they were a hard-working, well-put-together, well-drilled, well-organised team that weren't very flash, but every week you knew you were getting 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 from them, whereas Scotstown can blow a bit hot and cold sometimes, as we've seen from the Kilcoo game last season. There seems to be a little bit more consistency with them, but again, they're coming up against a team that are just so experienced in the Ulster Championship. And I mean, they have experience throughout the side of getting over the line in these types of games. They've been there, they've done that, they've got the t-shirt. So the massive task ahead of Kilcoo. And that's the 3 things that I love about the games that we have this weekend, is when you're talking about what sells a big game, it's always the why. And when you look at the 3 games that we have in the Senior Championship this weekend, they all have a reason why you should be really, really interested in these games. You've got, can Scotstown redeem themselves for what happened last year? And Kilcoo will no doubt have that Ergal game in their head as well. So they've got a score to settle too with the Ulster final. You look at the All-Ireland Camogie Final, Athenry and St. Finbarr, both teams that probably I wouldn't have expected to be in the final at the beginning of the year, but they're both here now today. And the reality is, Athenry have gone through the ringer to get here. When you look at who they beat the last 2 clubs that have been All-Ireland champions. So Athenry have taken out everybody in front of them. Now the question is, can they overcome one more task in St. Finbarr, or will they fall at the final hurdle against the Bars? Then you look at Kilkerrin Clonberne versus St. Ergnat. The journey that Moneyglass have been on to get to this final has been legendary. To beat Clonberne, Ergal and then Kilmacud Crokes in Kilmacud Crokes' own backyard. The same year that you win the Ulster Championship for the first time ever. And you go away to Stillorgan against the roaring favourites Kilmacud, and you beat them. And you beat them fair and square. Wasn't a smash and grab. Wasn't like they got a goal in the last minute to steal it. They were the better team over the hour. And now they're going up against the final boss. Like, they're going up against a team, as Matthew said, they're crazy statistics, 53 games that they haven't lost in across the club championship, which is just unheard of. The greatest club dynasty that I've seen, like in my lifetime. I've seen, you know, on the stats and stuff like that like Ballymacarby, LGFA and Waterford won something like 8 titles in 11 years or something. But the reality is, in the modern era, there's been nothing like this Kilkerrin Clonberne team. If they make it 5 in a row, they're up there with the all-time great teams, no question. So can they do it?
Well, it's a big question. We're going to find out this weekend. Aaron, I suppose, like Seamus was saying there, 3 finals this weekend, all with great stories behind them. Probably some finals, especially from the LGFA and from the Camogie perspective, that at the start of the season, or at least certainly based on some of my predictions, we wouldn't have expected at the start of the year. And especially considering particularly an issue that me and Seamus have been brought up a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, with the 2 All-Ireland LGFA semi-finals both being hosted by Kilmacud and Kilkerrin Clonberne at Kilkerrin Clonberne, and now we have St. Ergnat's in the final, an Antrim club in the final, which is just an unbelievable achievement for regardless of the final this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really interesting games this weekend, and I think you put it well there. Like, I think Finbarr versus Athenry is definitely one that really stands out. Like, especially when you look at the Roll of Honour and the history as well. Like, Athenry haven't won a All-Ireland Club Camogie Championship since 1977. They've lost 5 finals in that time as well. The famous one back in 2007 when they lost that. So they've had plenty of heartbreak along the way and numerous different finals. The Bars, I don't think they've ever won the All-Ireland Club Camogie Championship. So, yeah, massive. Like, especially at the start of the year, like, agree with what the lads are saying there. Like, you would have looked at Dixborough. You know, you would have looked at Ullart. I obviously mentioned Vincent's. There was a lot of teams could have mentioned, and probably not many people look towards Athenry or the Bar. So no, it's going to be very interesting. And yeah, I think Kilcoo Scotstown is the making of a very interesting game as well. You know, especially when you look at what happened last year and the sort of history between these two playing each other. There does feel like a lot on the line. Like, Scotstown haven't won a Munster, or they haven't won an Ulster Club Football Championship, I think, since the 1980s. And when you look at the players that they have, like, you feel like at some point they need to make the breakthrough. And when you think about it, like of Rory Beggan, Jack McCarron, you know, the Hughes, like, they're all kind of catching on a bit now. So, you know, like, I think if they don't get over the line this year, they might never do it. And it feels like kind of now or never a little bit for them. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to cracking into it, lads.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to start off this weekend with the All-Ireland Ladies Football Final, which is taking place in Croke Park between St. Ergnat's Moneyglass taking on Kilkerrin Clonberne. It is an absolutely massive fixture for both these clubs. Like you mentioned, Seamus, I'll come to you first. Going for 5 in a row All-Ireland titles. I mean, it puts you on the pedestal of arguably the greatest club side of all time, certainly in the LGFA circles. For St. Ergnat's, I mean, the journey that they've been on to get here, winning the Ulster Championship and in the fashion that they did, was absolutely unbelievable. But to then go away to Kilmacud Crokes, who many people would have been seeing as probably the team closest to Clonberne, to take them down potentially, and to go and beat them in their backyard, and to beat them by 2 points, and to put in the second half that they did. I mean, obviously you want to go and win a final, you absolutely do. But this feels like it's a game that they have absolutely nothing to lose in, and that could be a big motivator for them this weekend.
Absolutely, it could be. And the thing is that going into that semi-final against Kilmacud Crokes, they had nothing to lose in that game also. Everybody expected Kilmacud to win. And I'll be honest, I expected Kilmacud to win handy. I thought, especially with the game in their own backyard, I thought this is teed up for Kilmacud to win this. And that's why I was really annoyed when we did the weekend preview. I was pointing out that I thought it was a bit ridiculous that the overwhelming favourites had home advantage. I didn't see it as fair. I think the Comer Rangers, to be honest, while we're on the topic, I think Comer Rangers have the exact same right to feel aggrieved that they had to go away to Kilkerrin to play the 4 in a row All-Ireland champions in their pitch as well. So I think both of the games should have been played in a neutral ground, but that was the way that they ran it. And the thing about Ergnat as well, there's a saying as well about the referee, whenever the referee is against you, well, don't just beat them, beat the referee as well. And the reality is that Ergnat beat the circumstances that were laid out in front of them. They didn't complain. They didn't, get down about it. They just went away, did the task, and you have to give them unbelievable credit. The thing that makes this game great is either way, whichever way this result goes, history is going to be made. Either Ergnat's complete, one of the most remarkable All-Ireland Club Championship wins I've ever seen, beating Clonberne, then Kilkerrin, then Kilmacud Crokes in their own backyard. And if they top it off by beating the final boss, the team that are going for 5 in a row, one of the great dynasties that we've ever seen in the club championships and Gaelic games, if they do that, it is sensational. But then at the same time, if Kilkerrin win, which they will be favourites to do, they complete the 5 in a row. An unbelievable achievement, and one that puts them right up there as arguably the greatest club team we've seen in the game. Like, it's just, the stakes are massive. You would have to say the Kilkerrin are favourites. I think it would be a bit naive to say that they're not. But then again, it is naive to say that Ergnats have no chance, because Ergnats had no chance in a lot of people's minds going away to Kilmacud. And yet they beat them, and they beat them fair and square. If Kilkerrin take their eye off the ball, Ergnats can do damage. We've seen the forwards that they have. Maria O'Neill, the scoring rate that she can put up is ridiculous. Kathy Carey still doing the business. Brona Devlin as well was the Antrim captain this year. They're very, very strong in the forward line, Ergnats. And yeah, it is an unbelievable tie. It's one that when you look at it, it's a classic David against Goliath. Only this time, David has a puncher's chance.
Absolutely. Very well put. Very well put. Yeah, when you look at St. Ergnat's journey to the final anyways, in the Ulster Championship in particular, like, they had a pretty comfortable for opening round win over Breda by 5-10 to 2-5, and all these stats are courtesy of Matthew Hurley, the Gaelic Statsman. So great credit to him. Make sure to check it out on our Instagram page as well, where he's displayed both the paths to the final for both teams as well as the top scorers this year. As you can see on the screen here, they won the Antrim Championship. It'd probably be fair to say in convincing enough fashion. I think it'd be fair way of putting it. But in the Ulster Championship, Matthew, I mean, taking down Clonberne was one thing. Taking down Kilkerrin, and especially by 13 points. I mean, 310 to 6 points is an absolute hammering in any sort of provincial final. 40 goals and 134 points getting to this stage. 413 averaging per game. 763 conceded, 1-5 per game. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And especially at this time of the year as well. I keep referencing the last couple of weeks. The tallies that they're conceding in each game the last couple of weeks is very, very impressive. And, you know, look, Clonberne have a very, very strong attack. There's no doubt about that. But St. Ergnat's have a very good defence as well. And that could be what they need in order to win this game this weekend.
They definitely have an absolutely brilliant defence, in fairness. You look at it, obviously, you mentioned the defence there, only conceding 1-5 per game. And you look at it as well, they've only conceded a goal in 3 of their games so far. And I think that's a total of 10 games. They conceded 4 goals against St. Paul's when, by the looks of things, the game was over long before the final whistle in that game. Yeah. They conceded 2 against Breda, again that was over. And then Kilmacud, who took Kilkerrin all the way last year in Croke Park. So they've been very, very impressive defensively. Like, Seamus talked about their attack, and we'll bring up their scores now in a sec. But their defence has been very, very solid. Like, only to concede about 8 points a game. That's absolutely sensational. When you look at the challenges they've had to come across, like, they conceded 8 points against Clonberne, 6 points against Kilkerrin, 110 against Kilmacud Crokes. Like, to be honest, like, the only games where they conceded a load of scores, I would say, was that St. Paul's game where I don't know how St. Paul's scored 4 goals and 4 points, but there you go. And the Kilmacud game where Kilmacud scored 110. Other than that, they've been very, very strong defensively. And we'll bring up Kilkerrin's stats in a sec as well, which is very interesting because Kilkerrin have only conceded a goal in their run in only 2 games so far. So both defences, it'll be very strong. It'll be very interesting to see who goes on who. From the Ergnat's point of view, who's going to take Olivia Dibley, who's going to take Ava Noon, who's going to take Lindsay Noon if she plays. Obviously, on the Ergnat side, who's going to take or Kilkerrin defence, who's going to take Marie O'Neill, who's going to take Kathy Carey, who's going to take Brona Devlin. The matchups are going to be so interesting in this game. I think that could be the winning and losing of the game, in fairness, but we'll have to see what happens. And even when you look at the scores for Ergnat's there, like, you look at Kathy Carey up the top there, Marie O'Neill, Brona Devlin, you have Leah Stewart and Jojo Dara as well. Like, you do have very strong attackers in that Ergnat's team, and if they fire, they could cause a challenge to anybody. But as we've seen down through the years, Kilkerrin's defence is very, very strong. It is very strong. Like, they held Kilmacud last year. I know Kilmacud really took them to the well in Croke Park, But for a while, it was only Niamh Cotter that was on the score sheet for them. No other forward really excelled. Like Alva Davern was pretty quiet last year. I would say Michelle Davern was as well. So Kilkerrin have this potential to quieten down the key forward and only restrict them to points taken from frees. So it'll be very interesting to see, can Ergnats overcome the strong Kilkerrin defence? And on their side as well, can they keep the Kilkerrin forwards quiet? Because I think that could be the winning news of the game, both sides of the pitch.
Absolutely. No, some of the matchups are going to be very intriguing to see. If we look at Kilkerrin Clonberne's journey to the final, first of all, I mean, it's probably one thing, Aaron, that's probably not going to help them to some degree in comparison to St. Ergnats, is that they still had a tricky enough semi-final, you know, in order of having to travel to Kilmacud and obviously going up against the best side in Dublin, the best side in Leinster. And despite the fact that they were, I would probably say, winning comfortably enough coming towards the end, they still had to fight hard to hold on to their lead towards the end. Whereas you look at Clonberne, I mean, they absolutely walked their way through the Galway Championship. You look at the Connacht Championship, again, they fairly walked it, especially that final against St. Bridget's. It was a fairly one-sided final. And then having home advantage in the All-Ireland semi-final is obviously a massive help, but it was proven in the other game, it meant nothing in the end. But yes, for Cumbria Rangers, they just could not get a foothold in the game at all, only scoring 3 points over 60 minutes, which from their perspective, I'm sure they would have been disappointed with. But it just speaks volumes of this Clonberne team that no game really that they've played this year, judging by all the results, has been any sort of close affair. Is that something that could come back and potentially bite them in this game? Or do you feel that because they're such a strong team, it's not going to matter?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, all right. Like it's interesting though, Ergnats as well, because it's probably been similar up until the semi-final as well. Do you know what I mean? They've probably only maybe had one more really competitive game. You know, when you look at it, like they absolutely walked the floor with Kilkerrin really in the Ulster final. You know, so probably isn't that much of a huge difference. I suppose the main thing really is for Kilkerrin Clonberne. Like they've been here before. Like they've had years like this in the past where they've cruised the finals and everything else. And yeah, like they've like the experience within the team like very much shows. And I know we're gonna kind of go through some of the scores as well, but like it is going to be very interesting to see how you stop the likes of Olivia Divley, Eva Noon, who we can see on the screen there, Chloe Miskell there with 11 points, Lindsay Noon as well, who's been very impressive this year with 2-1. So it's going to be a really interesting game. Like from looking at Ergnats and watching some clips of them earlier today, like they're like obviously everyone's as we mentioned before, like their attack has been relentless. But like when you look at their press a lot of the time, especially versus Kilkerrin, like the amount of turnovers they were getting in that game, like it was a proper, like they probably strangled them really. Like Kilkerrin just couldn't get out at all. Like they were so comfortable in terms of turning the ball over. And I think they'll win this game, Ergnats, to be honest with you. I actually think they'll win this. I think they've been very, very strong in terms of turnovers and everything else. And I think I think their attack is there. And look, I certainly wouldn't be an expert when it comes to this, so it might be a shot in the dark. But I do actually fancy them from looking at clips earlier today.
Well, Seamus, there's your clip for the week. That is, do you know what? I admire it. That is a great prediction.
Oh, I rate it.
Putting out there. I absolutely rate it. It's absolutely brilliant. I suppose is there any point in asking you this next question, Seamus? But I suppose all year we've been mentioning about Salthill Knocknacarra and the forward line that they have and that most county teams would love to have, never mind a club team. Mm-hmm. When you look at Kilkerrin Clonberne, I mean, the players that they have in just their club team alone, most county teams would absolutely adore this. I mean, the De Villiers, Aisling Mallon, Louise Ward, Nicola Ward, Eva Noon, like, I mean, Chloe Miss, like, I mean, these are just absolutely outrageous players to have on a club team. And I mean, it's no wonder when you look at all the scoring tallies that they put up this year. I mean, they've got 20 goals in this year's championship and 132 points. And I mean, that's just a really impressive feat. And when you look at the players that they have, it's very easy to be admiring them as a club and admiring them as a team. And really, for a team that's so used to Croke Park as well, that's going to be a big figure. Their players are used to playing in Croke Park as well. Who would you feel is the one forward, though, that could be the major difference come this weekend?
It's a good question. And like, I think when we're looking at that, I think it's important to say as well, just before I do answer the question about the forward, that when we're reacting there, it's no disrespect at all to Ergnat. It's just like Kilkerrin are so good that you're kind of terrified to say that anybody's going to beat them. So like, fair play, Aaron, for saying that someone will take them. It's like betting against the 5 in a row Dublin team. Like, it's just the level of dominance they've had. And that's the other thing as well, is when you look at how they've got to the final, and I know that Ergnat's route has been similar, but it hasn't been as wide. The gap hasn't been as wide. Kilkerrin have absolutely annihilated everyone in their path. And the thing is like, around the middle as well is where they are hugely strong. And I'll get onto this about their forwards, which ones I think could do the damage. The main one that jumps off the page, obviously, is Olivia Divilly. What a year she's had. She correct me if I'm wrong off the top of my head. She was up for Player of the Year, wasn't she? She's up for a senior player. Unbelievable season. And she's the obvious one. But the reality is when you look at, especially around the middle third, they're so strong around the midfield and the half-back line. They've got Nicola Ward there at centre half-back, who's a generational player, Footballer of the Year in 2024. They've got Louise Ward at number 8 and Siobhan Divilly at number 9. They've got Hannah Noon as well in the half-back line. They are so strong. That's 4 nailed-on starters for the Galway team around their half-back line and midfield. And what they do with that is they form a platform of complete and utter dominance around the midfield that just, you're seeing as well, the common trait about what they're scoring is that the team that they're playing against aren't scoring. You've got Comer Rangers going away to play against Kilkerrin Clonberne. They've got players like Emma Murray in the team. They've got a really, really strong team. They only scored 3 points. 3 points is what they were held to. And they're like absolutely nailed on back-to-back Waterford champions and Munster champions, and they could only muster up 3 points. Kilkerrin just don't even give you a chance. They don't even let you get close, and they just manage the game out. That's how they've always done it. So that's why it's so difficult to beat them, because if you're playing against, say, Dublin, Donegal in 2014 is an interesting example, because Dublin at that time, while being looked at as being unbeatable under Jim Gavin that year, they did play a little bit Russian roulette style. And that's why when Donegal got the opportunities for the goals, it was because Dublin left themselves open to those goals happening. Whereas then after that defeat happened, Jim Gavin switches up the system, makes Dublin a lot more pragmatic and harder to beat. Kilkerrin are so hard to beat because they don't take any risks either. You're not going to get many goal chances against them. That's why if Ergnats get 2 goal chances, they need to score 3. Like, literally, they need to take every single chance that they get. They need to make everything work for them. Maria O'Neill needs to have the game of her life. They all need to have the games of their lives. And that is not it. That is just emphasizing just how good this Kilkerrin Clonberne team is. I do believe that if anybody can beat them, I believe it's Ergnats, because they have absolutely earned their place here at the table because of who they've gone through and how they've done it. But Kilkerrin are the champs for a reason. And this is going to be an almighty task. So to answer your question in a long, long way, in terms of who's the key forward, I really don't think it matters. I think Kilkerrin are so good at their build-up play, at getting the ball up to the position where someone takes the shot. And whether that's Lindsay Noon, Eva Noon, Olivia Divilly, Siobhan Divilly, Chloe Miskell, quite simply, it doesn't matter. They've worked the ball into the best position for someone to take the shot. And that is one thing that they definitely do have a leg up on Ergnats. They have more threats. Maria O'Neill, Brona Devlin, Kathy Carey are the obvious trio to stop. But for me, Kilkerrin have threats from all over the field.
Yeah, they certainly do. No, it's going to be very interesting to see how Ergnat stop the forward line in particular. And I mean, I suppose, Matthew, before I go to your prediction as well, we know who Aaron's going with now. And Seamus, I'm going to imagine you're probably going to go with Clonberne for this one.
I'm going to go with Kilkerrin to win, but I think Ergnats are going to push them a lot harder than anybody who hasn't been paying attention would think that they would. I think a lot of people will look, if they know just the basics, they know that Kilkerrin have won 4 in a row, they'd expect that Ergnats won't be able to put it up to them. My fear is that in a massive open Croke Park pitch, Kilkerrin are way more experienced on that grass. Could that play a huge part? Because we've seen, like, examples where a team gets to Croke Park and they're not used to the pitch and everything like that, and it can the occasion can kind of overwhelm them. I think there's 3 ways this goes. I think option A, Kilkerrin win narrowly. Option B is Moneyglass win narrowly, or option C, Kilkerrin dominate. And I'm going to say option A. I think Kilkerrin will shade it. I'm going to say Kilkerrin by 4 or 5, and they pull away in the final 10.
Interesting call. Matthew, would you be in agreement, or are you going to go with Aaron and say that's going to be potentially, some people might call it potentially, one of the shocks of the century in LGFA?
I just can't see it. So I know Ergnats have had an unbelievable journey, and to be fair, it wouldn't be forgotten even if they lose the final on Saturday evening. But it is very, very hard to see past this Kilkerrin Clonberne team. And Seamus mentioned their threats all over the pitch and their attacking options, their middle third options. They defensively, looking at their stats, they conceded only 2 points to Salton Knocknacara, 5 points to Cork, 4 points to Mike Cullen, 6 points to Clare Galway, 9 points to St. Bridget's, 3 points to Kilcoo Rangers. This isn't happening once in a blue moon. This is happening on a regular basis. Their defence is so strong. I just can't see how Ergnats have they do have firepower, but how will they have the perfection to get over the line? Because the Kilkerrin have only conceded a goal, I mentioned before, in only 2 games this year, against Westport in the Connacht Championship and in the Galway Championship against Clare Galway. They didn't concede a goal against Cork Rangers, not even a sniff. They didn't concede a goal against St. Bridget's, didn't in the Galway final against Clare Galway. The thing is, Clare Galway scored a goal earlier in the Galway Championship against Kilkerrin, but then Kilkerrin learned their mistakes somewhat, and then they kept a clean sheet in the final. Like, this team is so good at this present moment in time, and the run they have been on since losing that All-Ireland Final to Mourne Happy in 2019 has been absolutely sensational. 52 wins as of now. It could be 53 on Saturday evening. And I think it will be 53. I think Kilkerrin Clonberne will win the game. And obviously, the lads have been saying this, and I'd say it again. It is not a disrespect to Ergnats. It's just probably a tribute to how good this Kilkerrin Clonberne team is. And I feel like that'll be enough just to get them over the line in terms of their attacking output and in terms of their defence as well. Just one thing before maybe we move on. It is a shame. Obviously, this isn't TG Carr's fault. Other things take precedence and all that. It is a shame that this final is not shown on TG Carr TV. Obviously, the junior Eurovision takes precedence on that day. Obviously, there was Irish selections and all that, so you have to kind of show it. And fair play to TG Carr for taking outside the box and going on TG Carr YouTube over this. But it is a shame that an All-Ireland Senior Final is not shown on main TV, whereas the intermediate final is earlier today, and so is Kilcoo and Scotstown as well. Look, it is just a shame, but it's just an unfortunate clash that TG Carr just can't do anything about. It is a shame.
Agreed.
Yeah, and actually, before we do move on, lads, that was something that I did want to bring up with you, because obviously, look, it's been a struggle over the last number of years, both for LGFA and Camogie to be getting the same sort of respect that GAA is getting, that the men's game is getting, whatever. Does this sort of set it back a small bit, that a national final for LGFA? And look, credit to them, they're still showing it on YouTube, and it's still brilliant that they have the platform, whatever. But is it a small bit of a shame that it's not being shown on either one of TG Carr or RTE this weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Yeah, I think it's very disappointing. A game of that standard, like, it's an All-Ireland final, like, it doesn't really get any bigger. Do you know what I mean? Do you know, like, in terms of club level and everything else, senior final, like, so it's, yeah, it is very disappointing. Look, I suppose the one thing we should stress that it is being shown somewhere. It is obviously on TG Carr YouTube, so we will, people will get to see it. So at least they have thought outside the box and everything else. But yeah, like, maybe it is unfortunate with timing. I don't really know if they could have planned it a little bit more in advance. But look, yeah, I don't know, Junior Eurovision, if that's what people want to watch, then fair enough,
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, like, obviously, like, I used to work there, so I kind of have a decent idea of, like, how these things come about. But I am kind of scratching my head a little bit about it, because it is the All-Ireland Final. Like, I don't understand kind of why this had, like, the date was scheduled a long time in advance, but the reality is, yeah, at least it is being shown. But I would love if it was on TV. That's the main thing. I would love if it was on TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to stress as well, lads, as well. I know this is a GA talk show and things like that, and GA podcast, but other people have other interests as well. We kind of have to stress that as well. Look, during Eurovision, there could be a situation, let's just say, I don't think it will happen now, knowing our luck, but Ireland could win the competition, and then some Eurovision fans will complain and say, why isn't that being shown?
Well, it reaches into a larger issue, Matthew, that TG Caha should have 2 channels.
Yeah.
Like TG Caha should have 2 TV channels. I remember thinking the entire time I was there, we need 2 channels. Because the amount of times that you've got Sport TG Caha, Trad TG Caha, Fulham TG Caha, Nuacht, like so many different programs that are all vying for the main slots. And then on the weekends during the club championship, because most people that are GAA fans that don't speak Irish will tune in to TG Caha for GABO. Like GABO is constantly taking the best slots on Sunday to show the club game and the league games and everything like that. So the reality is TG Caha just should have a second channel. But that's a government issue. And if it did have a second channel, we'd be treated to so much more content. You know, they'd pull out all the stops to get. Like if they had 2 channels, GABO would be showing 4 games, guarantee it.
Possibly, yeah, absolutely. But look, hopefully that day does come over the next couple of years anyways, but we'll just have to wait and see. We're going to move on next to the All-Ireland Senior Camogie Final, which is taking place this Sunday in Croke Park between St. Finbarr and Athenry. I'll be at this game as I'll be doing commentary for the first game of the Intermediate Championship, but we're going to focus on the senior for the moment. And Matthew, I'm going to come to you first with this as a Cork man. St. Finbarr's in the All-Ireland Final. They had a tough journey the last day to get here, but they've been going well throughout the season generally. 2 very entertaining games, that has to be said, in the Munster Senior Championship, particularly against Newcastle West, which went to after extra time, if that's the right way of saying it. But they had a great win the last day over Lochiel Shamrocks. 3-15 to 3-14 is an absolutely cracking result, especially at this time of the year as well. Finbarr's in the All-Ireland Final. It's a great achievement for them. You know, they've had an unbelievable year in both men's and women's, and if they can cap it off now with an All-Ireland win the Camogie Championship, then it would be surreal for the club.
Would. And just before we get into it, Aaron did mention nobody backed Finbarr's. Myself and Seamus did back Finbarr's for Munster earlier in the year, so yeah. There is something there. But in fairness, this Finbarr's team, they do. I've said this all, but they do have the quality. You look at the quality players that they do have: the Saoirse McCartans, all the Callans, and indeed the Kate Walls, the Kira Goldens. Like, they do have some quality players. And you looked at the Cork Championship, they defended their title. We'll look at the scores and the journey to the final in a sec. But like, they blitzed everyone in Cork. And then in Munster, yes, they had that scare against Newcastle West. But then against De La Salle, they shackled the likes of Beck Harton, Abby Flynn. They got something out of their key forwards in the game. Kate Wall getting 2-4 from playing that game. And eventually they got over the line. That was a fantastic win for them. And then in the semi-final, obviously after extra time, to do it not just once but twice on their journey to the final is remarkable in its own right. It was sensational how they beat Lochiel Shamrocks. So I'm sure we'll bring up the scores now in a sec in terms of their top scores. But coincidentally, Kira Golden's only got 3 points. She probably got the most important point of the whole journey, that winner against Lochiel Shamrocks. Yes, Orla Callan found her in that position, and that was an excellent pass by Orla, but what a score by Kira Golden to put over the bar. She has 7 on her back, but Kay Wall was telling me during the week for a piece in the Southern Star that actually Kira actually plays around the middle of the park most of the time. So to pop up in that position, in the forward position, and get it over the bar, it's absolutely sensational, in fairness to the bars. And interesting enough, I did watch an interview today. Kay Wall did an interview, I think, with the Camogie Association earlier this week, and she talked about the men's footballers, the way they lost to Dingle, and she was saying the lads were absolutely devastated over that. I think the Bars Camogie team are thinking at the back of their heads as well. Obviously, they don't want to put too much pressure on themselves, but they're thinking at the back of the head, we need to right the wrongs of that Munster final against Dingle. We need to go on and bring some happiness back to the club and win the All-Ireland title. And they certainly have the players to do that. They do have threats all over the pitch. But when you look at Athenry, their journey to the final, they've beaten the last 2 All-Ireland champions in Sarsfields and in Dixborough, and deservedly so. Yes, when you look at like journeys to the final, Athenry's games have been probably characteristically tighter, while the bars have been wider margins. But this is a final. This is Croke Park. This is what makes this final so interesting, because both sides, I think Aaron touched on it earlier, both sides are very, very inexperienced as club sides going into Croke Park. And this what makes the novelty of it maybe a bit more interesting for the viewer in more ways than one. So there is going to be interesting players on show. For Athenry, you have Olin Rabbit, Sabina Rabbit, Emer Keane, who's been absolutely sensational. Obviously, Therese Donoghue or Therese Mara around the middle of the park. Jessica Gill has been outstanding. Dervla Higgins, nominated for Camogie Player of the Year, absolutely sensational in the defence. Then you look at the bars, players that I've named already. Like, it's going to be a cracking game, and really looking forward to this as well. Well, I suppose it is going to be a very interesting game, and as well as that, obviously the bars are the first Cork finalists since Milford in the mid-2010s. So it is a big, big occasion for Cork Camogie as well in getting a club to the All-Ireland final. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting game, I think.
Yeah, certainly. So it's going to be a very interesting game, and one that I suppose I wouldn't have seen Athenry potentially getting to the final myself. I thought Dixborough would have been the team to get to the final, but obviously Athenry took care of them in the All-Ireland semi-final. We're going to pull up the scores first of all from the St. Finbarr's side, the scores from the teams this year. And I suppose, Seamus, I mean, it's actually laughable when you look at the scores, the scoreline that players have put up this year. I mean, when you've scored 6-16 and you're the third highest, I mean, that's absolutely outrageous. Even 2-13 being the fourth highest from Kate Wall, for me, is just laughable, because I don't think I've even scored 2-13 in the last 5 years, never mind in one season, you know, and she's just doing this willy-nilly. But the firepower that Finbarrs have up front is absolutely unbelievable, and that's something that Athenry are going to have to be very, very aware of on Sunday.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, you look at the way, like, look at the score as well. Saoirse McCartan there, 653, like, absolutely ridiculous. Like, I mean, 127 from frees and then the 245s, but then apart from that, everything else has come from play. Like, she's been absolutely sensational. It's like the way as well that they battled past, because on top of the fact that they were really, really impressive and dominant in the Cork Championship, they showed all the mettle required to get through the semi-final against Lochiel Shamrocks. Like, you're looking at that, it's one thing to beat a team like 420 to 13 points, like when everything that you touch flies over the bar, flies into the back of the net. Like, it's easy to win those games. But you look at the Munster Championship, beating Newcastle West after extra time, beating Lochiel Shamrocks in the All-Ireland semi-final after extra time. Like, there's a lot of questions being asked of you when you're going to the well like that, when you have to go when your legs are killing you. And Finbarrs have answered those questions time and time again. Like, that's my main thing coming in, is that they have absolutely been made to pay. From when they got out of the Cork Championship, they've had to battle past every single team that they've come up against. How well will that do them in the final? Like, it's really, really difficult to say, because obviously Athenry had an amazing win against Sarsfields in the Galway Championship, and then they twiddled thumbs until they beat Dixborough in the semi-final. Like, it's really, really interesting to know, like, what way would you have rather come into the final? The one thing I will say, though, is that, and a little bit of a spoiler, but I am leaning towards Athenry just to give them the respect of who they beat. They beat the last two champions. And I think the reality is, you look at the way that they've got through here, the results, first of all, that they're putting up on the run up to that final. Like, you look at the performance there against Ormond Marie, 121, like an absolutely outrageous performance there. But then it's their last two games, like 2-8 to 1-8 against Sarsfields, 1-9 to 10 points against Dixborough. Tight games, and they came out the right side of both of them against two teams that are recently All-Ireland champions. Like, what that tells me is that they have been in the tight games against the best teams in Ireland in their last two games, and they've won them both back to back. Now, is it going to be third time unlucky? Like, again, only time will tell. Like, this, for me, is a classic case. But we'll look at their scores first before I make this point. Not as flashy. Like, you're looking Sabina Rabbit there, obviously, but only 6 points from play. Emer Keane, 2-6. Like, that's the top score that they have from play. They're not as flashy, and they're not as grabbing the headlines in terms of how much they've put up as St. Finbarrs are. But it's the way that they won those two games. Now, obviously, massive asterisk there is the games against Mulla, Clarenbridge, Stars. They aren't included in those scores, so maybe the scores are significantly higher. But for the games that we have, and for the information that we do have, we can probably stab a guess that they aren't as high up there as St. Finbarrs are. But the reality is, when you look at it this way, I'm going to bring up a really good example. Do you remember the 2010 Connacht Football Championship when Sligo beat Mayo and Galway back to back? And then there was a very good Roscommon side waiting for them in the final. But because they had beaten Mayo and beaten Mayo and Galway, everyone thought, oh, Sligo are going to walk it. It's just, you've got a team that are very, very good waiting for you in the final. And you can only beat who has been put in front of you. And they've beaten very, very good teams, St. Finbarr's, a very good De La Salle team, a very good Newcastle West team. And then to beat Lochiel Shamrocks, who have been dominant in Ulster, and to do it after extra time twice against Newcastle West and Lochiel, they've nothing left to prove. And it really is a flip of a coin here. But what I will say is, if Athenry beat SARS and Dixborough in the 1 year and don't win the All-Ireland, I hate to say it, Liam, but that's more Arsenal than Arsenal themselves.
Is it bad that I was about to say this is like when we bet Real Madrid last year and then lost to PSG in the Champions League, that kind of, or the year Leicester City won the league. So don't worry, no offense taken whatsoever. I suppose, Aaron, he's made a good point there that their scoring tallies and the players that they have that have gotten the most scores for them is absolutely nowhere near as high as St. Finbarr's. But then you look at it from a different perspective. Again, I've gotten very into the defensive side of a lot of sports recently, but I suppose from an Athenry perspective, 1-8 against Sarsfields, 10 points against Dixborough. They've been having to really grind out the games in a different, maybe sort of a way to how Finbarr's have. The Finbarr's games have been severely entertaining and they've been extremely high scoring as well. But then you look at Finbarr's as well. I think I linked it before to Croatia in the World Cup 2018, having to go extra time constantly. And, you know, the strength that they've had to show, the fitness that they've had to show. You have a real resilient defence against a team who just does not know how to give up. And that's going to be the real intriguing battle this weekend. And especially on an open field in Croke Park as well. And you have the type of forwards that both Athenry and Finbarr's have, but they both have a never say die attitude, which we could see potentially another extra time here. You never know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a possibility. Like, I think Bars have had more firepower. There's no question about that in terms of attack. Whereas Athenry maybe going the other way have been better defensively. You know, like Athenry have probably had to muscle their way kind of through a lot of these games. Whereas Bars have definitely had the kind of attacking quality and attacking output. And even like that's reflected as well by the scorers as well for Athenry. Like in terms of what they've produced, like we were mentioning before about like the Bars and, you know, having Kate Wall scoring 213 and or like Cahalan scoring 616, but like when you kind of make your way down the scores of Athenry, you know, Clodagh Burke with 7 points, Kerry O'Driscoll with 10 points, like there is kind of a difference there between the kind of top scores reflected on both teams. So it's definitely been a different path for Athenry, but they've been far better defensively than the Bars. They've probably played better teams as well. But the Bars probably do have a little bit more in attack. They probably do have a little bit more firepower in terms of what they can offer. And that's why I'd probably just shade it towards them.
Interesting call. Matthew, Seamus, I'll probably start with Matthew first. I can imagine I know which side you're probably going to be going with for this weekend, but from an Athenry perspective, like was mentioned there, in a way, they don't have a lot to prove. They've beaten the last 2 All-Ireland champions, so they've gotten here on merit and they absolutely deserve their place in the final. But from a St. Finbarr's perspective, like was mentioned there, after what happened last weekend in the football with the way Dingle won it in the end, could that be just the absolute extra bit of motivation that's needed for them to get over the line this weekend, to put smiles back on people's faces? And could it potentially set them up for being, from our perspective anyways, potentially Club of the Year across all codes?
Maybe so. And to be honest, they're an absolutely fantastic club, St. Finbarr's. It's just in the LGFA, they're a bit down. But when you look at it in football, in hurling, and camogie, they have this one club, one for all club mentality. I think Thurles Sarsfields have the same up the country as well. It's just, I love those sorts of clubs that are not separated depending on if it's camogie, LGFA, or hurling and football. They are all 4 codes in all one club. And I love that. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And when you look at the camogie team excelling, the hurling team competitive in the Cork Championship, the football team as competitive as they were last weekend, it's just it's a credit to what the Bars represent themselves as. Like, you look at the legends down through the years. Like, if the Bars do win the Camogie as well, they would have won the All-Ireland in 3 different codes at senior level, which is such an impressive feat, I would say, at senior. Obviously, the footballers won in the 80s, the hurlers have won in around that time as well. The Camogie team are hoping to make it a three-peat, which would be a remarkable achievement for the history of St. Finbarr's. And they are a historic club. They've been a great club in Cork for years. And to be fair, like, they only won their first Munster Camogie title this season. So they've only made the breakthrough this season, but they've only had, like, the players that they have had only around now. And it's kind of a shame when you look at the likes of Jim O'Connor. Obviously, she's part of the backroom team, but what a player she was for St. Finbarr's in like the 2000s and the 2010s. But it's great that she's still playing a part within the group, if you know what I mean. So look, I think the Bars are well set to win this All-Ireland title. Obviously, Athenry are more proven when you look at the games that they have won. But at the same time, the Bars' firepower, I think, it's going to be very interesting to see what Dervla Higgins goes on, I will say. One of the best defenders in the country, probably the best defender in the country at this present moment of time. Well, she was the best according to the authorities in the Camogie Association anyway, considering the Player of the Year nominees. It'll be interesting to see who Dervla goes on. Does she go on Saoirse McCartan, who scored the most, or does she go on Orla Callan, who's an all-rounder, well-good player in terms of assisting scorers and in terms of scoring as well? Or possibly Keevan McCarthy, who's been the unsung hero. Like, it's going to be very interesting to see who Dervla Higgins does pick up in this game. The middle of the park's going to be very interesting. You've Aisling Shannon on one side and Ciara Golden. Then on the Athenry side, you have the experience in Therese Donoghue there. It's going to be interesting to see kind of the matchups again in this final. I think the Bars will win this game because of obviously their firepower in the team and the fact that if one player isn't performing as well as they could, like, for example, in the Munster final, there was points where Saoirse McCartan was taking over the game, or the Callan was taking over the game. But voila, Kate Wall scores 2-4 from play. Like, you have these sorts of situations where other forwards can't step up, and they do have players off the bench. The likes of Emer Hurley, who scored 4 goals and 4 points in this campaign, has normally been brought on as a sub, as a full forward to terrorise defences in many ways. Ella Wiggin, the back, is another very nifty player as well up front to come off the bench. So for that reason, that's another reason why I actually tip the Bars as well. Their bench is very, very strong, and I think the Bars might get over the line. And obviously, if they were to win the All-Ireland, what an achievement to win All-Ireland titles in football, hurling and camogie.
Could you imagine if Athenry get a dodgy free in the last minute?
Oh, no.
Too soon?
No, we can't be adding fuel to the fire now. Let's move on quick. Because that would seriously, there'd be such generational hate if that happens. It'd be outrageous. But Seamus, from yourself, are we going with the Bars or are we going to go with Athenry this weekend? Who are you siding with?
I kind of hinted at it earlier, but I am going to go with Athenry. I think if you look at their journey to the final, they have all the makings of being a team that can just get the job done. And they've done it now in back-to-back games against the last 2 champions. Like, to beat Sarsfields, who were all conquering. Okay, maybe it might be a case that, like, you know, like Waddy Graham's Glen, maybe like they've climbed the mountain, maybe they're a bit out of steam. But then to double down on it and beat Dixborough, who were fired up. Like, Dixborough wanted to get back to the top of the mountain. They'd won the Leinster Championship in an amazing display against Out at the Balla. And for Athenry to turn them over, it shows that they're the real deal, like, to go back-to-back against the last 2 champions. The thing is with them as well is, as Matthew mentioned there, the defensive solidity is absolutely unbelievable. And I know that Finbarrs are so good going forward. We pulled up the scores that they had earlier, like the scoring rate of the likes of Kate Wall, Saoirse McCartan, Orla Callan. Like, it's frightening what they're putting up. But what another thing that we haven't taken into account, and we haven't taken it into account for the LGFA final either, the weather's probably going to be terrible. Like, yeah. I would put good money down that the weather will be awful. And I feel like in Croke Park, when the weather's awful, I feel like it doesn't tend to favour the team with more flair and more attacking threat. And I think that could tip it a little bit in the favour of Athenry if it becomes a real dogfight, the way that the Stars game was, the way that the Dixborough game was. And I think they've got experience in getting over the line in those ones. So I'm going against the current in this one. I'm going to be the Aaron Prendergast for this final, and I'm going to go for Athenry.
Interesting call. We will wait and see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting final. I hope for my sake.
You have to say where you're going. Hold on. You don't get.
Let's move on before we. I thought I got away. With it. Do you know what it is? I was very tempted. I'm glad you didn't ask the football, because I was actually very tempted to say Ergnat just to side with Aaron and to potentially just cause more uproar. And you know what? I'm going to stick with her. I'm going to go 2 for 2. I'm going to say Ergnat is going to cause the upset. I don't know why. Sometimes the 5-0 is just not meant to be. I know Dublin did it, but sometimes it's just not meant to be. It wasn't meant to be for Kerry. It wasn't meant to be for Kilkenny. It wasn't meant to be for Limerick. I think we might see it again this weekend. That pressure sort of gets the team sometimes, although this Clonberne team is absolutely unbelievable, and I could sound very, very stupid come Saturday evening. I'm going to back Ergnat to pull off the shock. I'm going to absolutely do it. In terms of this game, I just think with the firepower that the Bars have, and I actually have a weird feeling that they'll be absolutely motivated after last weekend. As you said there, Matthew, they're one club, they're one dynasty. I think they might just have enough firepower to get over the line this weekend. Although I think it could be a game that could go to extra time, potentially. I don't see much between these two sides at all. So I'm going to back the Bars this weekend, and I hope for my sake it's not terrible weather, because I have to park at my sister's house and about 20-minute walk from Crow Park. So I hope to God it's not raining come Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning. But we're going to move on to the Ulster Football Championship Final, which is taking place this weekend as well, this Saturday. It's between Kilcoo and Scotstown, two teams who are very familiar with each other. There's no question about that. Both teams have suffered a good few losses in the Ulster Championship Finals over the last couple of years. Kilcoo losing both in 2022 and last year. Scotstown going down in 2023. Aaron, I'm going to start with you first. You seem to be a very big fan of this Scotstown team. Like you're mentioning, some of the players probably getting on with age. They had it. They had it nervy the last day against Newbridge in that rescheduled game. They had it won. They almost blew it. They almost did, like Seamus said, they almost did an Arsenal on it and almost bottled it. But they came through in the penalty shootout in the end. And especially after last year's, let's be honest, humiliation against Kilcoo, they'll absolutely want to rewrite the wrongs of last year.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, and I know we were mentioning the Arsenal reference there, but I think Scotstown maybe is probably more of a reflection, or maybe the Mayo footballers or something, when it comes to Sam Maguire or something. I don't really know, but yeah, it's like they've all the talent in the world. Scotstown, like they've some incredible players. Like we don't need to go through the players. You kind of mentioned them earlier. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't happened. And look, a lot of it has been down to the fact that there have been some very good teams in Ulster. You've had Kilcoo, you've had Watty Gramesglen, you've had Kilkerrin, all in recent seasons, who've all been very, very strong. Like with Scotstown, I feel like with Scotstown, they have some brilliant individual players who can light up a game, who can win a game by themselves, who can turn it on. But I think Kilcoo are probably more of a team. They're more of a unit, and they have multiple ways that they can hurt Scotstown. And the fact with Kilcoo as well, like it's just the way, like I think Kilcoo's best attribute is just their system nearly. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's an individual player. Like it's just the way that they play football. They're all singing off the same hymn sheet. They cut through teams. They're like their output in terms of goal chances as well is freakish. Like, do you know what I mean? Like they're creating so many chances, getting so many goals. Look, I've kind of backed Scotstown a lot from the start of the year, so I'll probably stick with them. But I think with Scotstown, you can't just be relying on Rory Beggan to kick 2 pointers to keep you in the game. You can't be relying on some of the individual players, because I think Kilcoo will take advantage of that. But yeah, it's a very, very hard one to call. I'll be curious to see what the lads think.
Absolutely. I suppose, Seamus, looking at Kilcoo, one thing that's probably not going to be in their favour is the fact that their semi-final was played almost a month ago. They've had a very, very long time to get themselves ready for this clash. And I mean, they were a good bit better than Erngales in their semi-final as well. They basically had the game wrapped up with, I would say, probably 15, 20 minutes to go. And especially at this time of the year, it's very hard to generate a big comeback. But looking at Kilcoo, they'll have major regrets about not winning the Ulster Championship last year. And they saw how close Kilkerrin came to winning the All-Ireland as well. how they took down Dr. Crokes in the semi-final as well. It's been a couple of years since they won the Ulster Championship as well. What do you make of them this season so far in the Ulster Championship? And do you see a chance for Scotstown to potentially hurt them this weekend?
I do see a chance for Scotstown to hurt them this weekend, because the reality is, while we talk about Kilcoo and how good they are and how experienced they are and everything like that, the reality is in the last few years they've been beat. They haven't got out of the Ulster Championship. Glen have turned them over. Last year, Kilkerrin turned them over. And when you're looking at it, like, what are the main traits that Kilkerrin had? Flair. Kilkerrin had an unbelievable flair in their attack with the Canavan brothers, Peter Hart. And you're looking at this Scotstown team and you're thinking, well, there's a lot of flair in their attack as well. They've the likes of Jack McCarran, they've the likes of Kieran Hughes, they've the likes of Conor McCarthy bombing forward. There's a lot of flair in that Scotstown attack as well. And when they can get going, they can really, really run up a big tally on a team. And the reality is that sometimes when you know how good that Scotstown team is, and they are a fantastic team, sometimes you just have days where you're just useless. And that day last year, Scotstown were just crap. They just didn't turn up. They were not at the races. And it was one of those where you could almost go, do you know what? You can't even take that one into account. As far as I'm concerned, that game is no use when trying to analyse this one, because Scotstown did not turn. If it was a very, very close game, or you thought that Scotstown were playing to the level that they're capable of and Kilcoo still walked it, and you have a little bit more evidence to go off, but Scotstown didn't play well at all last year as far as I'm concerned. So the reality is Kilcoo, they've bags and bags and bags of experience. But I actually would look at them very, very similarly actually at this stage now to how I look at Ballygunner and the Hurling. That, especially at this stage of the season, they're the experienced team. They've bags of it. Everyone's saying, oh, they know how to get the job done and everything like that. But they've only got the job done once. They've only won the All-Ireland once. They've been undone at stages of the season every time. And Kilcoo will be desperate to cash in on this generation that they have by winning another All-Ireland title this year. And I think they'll look at who's left. You've got a Dingle team who won the Munster Championship for the first time in their history. You've got a Ballybowden side who haven't won the All-Ireland in 10 years. And you've got a St. Bridget side who haven't won the All-Ireland in over 10 years as well. There's no Kilmacud Crokes in there who won it very recently. Like, it is an evergreen pitch when they get in there. So there's a lot that they'll look at and go, we've a good opportunity to win this All-Ireland should we get through. So I think they're going to give this everything that they have. It's a question of, like, if you're going, because I know who I'd enjoy watching more in the All-Ireland semi-final. I'd enjoy watching Scotstown more, to be honest. But it's like, if I was going to bet on it, I'd say Scotstown. But if I'm going to put my life on it and say, like, who's shown to me that they just find a way to win these games, probably Kilcoo.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's one thing, Matthew, that does sort of worry me about this Scotstown team, because I'm like Seamus, I do like this Scotstown team a lot, and I stupidly thought that they beat Kilcoo last year until obviously what occurred in the end. But you look at the last day as probably the biggest example of all. They were 114 to 1-4 up at halftime. At one stage, they were 216 to 111 up with about, was it 7, 8, 9 minutes to go. And then they just completely fell apart towards the end. They nearly fell apart in extra time, nearly fell apart after extra time. And they did win on penalties. But you would just wonder if they are playing to the absolute best of their potential, if they are 5, 6, 7 points up coming towards the end of the game and they can see the Ulster Cup in their sights. Is it going to come into their minds of what happened the last day? Are they going to get too ahead of themselves? Is that something that would worry you about this team this weekend? Or is it just a case of what happened the last day happened and we just have to move on to this game?
The thing is, like, this Scotstown team, Seamus listed there, Bowden, Kilcoo, Bridges. Okay, Dingle earned their first campaign. It's a bit of novelty with them. But this Scotstown team hasn't been proven over the last few years. Like, I know they beat Kilcoo with a last-minute Rory Beggan score a few seasons ago. Maybe that was a flash in the pan because that was a moment of brilliance. And I think Scotstown would win this game through a moment of brilliance. Whether that be Jack McCarran, Conor McCarthy, Rory Beggan, Darren Hughes, Kieran Hughes, whoever it is, it'll be a moment of brilliance that wins the game for them. I don't Like, the thing is, if this is a dogfight, if this is a mucky day, I fancy Kilcoo all day long to win this game, because Scotstown just don't. They do have quality players, but I don't think they have enough grafters in the team. Whereas you look at Kilcoo, yes, you could say, okay, they beat Ergnat, they didn't put up a challenge. Neither did Loch McCrory. But I looked at the game against Loch McCrory, I watched the full game there. What they did with Owen McEnome and Rory McCullough, they pinpointed their best man markers and they just put them on them, and that was good night after that. I think that's what Kilcoo will do to this Scotstown team. They'll just do everything in their power to suffocate them and try to make this as boring a game as possible. This is what Kilcoo do. Like, I think Paul Flynn had this. I always go back to this when describing teams that win kind of ugly. Paul Flynn said this about Tyrone beating Cavan earlier this year in the Ulster Football Championship. It was boringly good. This is what Kilcoo are all about. They make the game a dogfight and they thrive on it. Like, they don't have flashy players, as you mentioned there, but what they do have is grafters that will do their all for the team. You look at, obviously, Scotstown have the brilliance in Jack McCarron and Conor McCarthy and all these players, and the Hughes brothers, obviously, and Began. But what Kilcoo have is not particularly flashy inter-county players, I'd say, but very hard grafters. The Paul Devlins, not the most flashiest forward, but does the job. The Jerome Johnsons, Sheelan Johnsons might be a bit of flair that they need. Eugene Brannigan, not your typical footballer, I would say, but he works damn hard. Aaron Brannigan, Ian Brannigan, these sorts of players. Obviously Bobo and goal, Niall Kane. They do have some absolute brilliant players that will give their all for the team. I don't feel like Scotstown have enough of grafters in their team. That's why I think Kilcoo will win the game at the weekend. I just feel like Kilcoo want more than one All-Ireland. They're like Ballygunner this year. They're on a mission. Scotstown, like, I feel like if they play a Ballyboden or a Dingle, I might fancy Scotstown, because it will be a score fest. It will be you score, we score, whatever. But Kilcoo will get out their threats and make this a dogfight. And I just feel like that'll be enough for Kilcoo to get over the line. I can't see how Scotstown win this game. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to be boring now, but I don't feel like this Scotstown team is proven enough to get over the line this weekend. And especially what they showed, yes, they got through on penalties against Newbridge. You could argue they get through that, and no other team kind of would. But the reality was, they were 10, 13 points up at half-time against, yes, Newbridge are a good side, but a side that, not like Watty Grimsley and Schlott Neal, they wouldn't have as flashy players as them, and they only were their second Ulster Championship campaign, and they still let the lead slip, and Newbridge could have easily won the game. Whereas Kilcoo, when you look at their two games so far, it's been nothing flashy. They just get the job done. And I feel like with the weather being bad as well, that's another factor as well, as Seamus mentioned on one of the other games in this show. I feel like that could be another factor, and Kilcoo will win the game. And I think they could win this by something like a 5 or 6 points, but a comfortable 5 or 6 points.
Yeah, I'd be going for them to shade it, to be honest. But I do agree with you. I think that if I was likening it to another sport, I'd liken it to the classic UFC reference of like a flashy striker against a wrestler, like Usman Masvidal or something, where Masvidal is such an electric striker, and then Usman just wrestled him for 25 minutes and won by decision. Like, I look at it this way, that I can just see Kilcoo managing this game out. But then again, when Scotstown did beat them, it was poor conditions and Began got the winner. But I do think that, yeah, I'm going Kilcoo. So yeah, back to you, lads.
Aaron?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Scotstown. Like, I've backed them quite a lot through the moment the Ulster Club Football Championship has started. I do agree with the lads' points there as well. Look, Kilcoo are they are the masters of these type of games and everything else. And look, conditions will probably play a part. It's probably one of them. Like, if this game is in Croke Park, maybe in January or February, when the weather is a little bit better, I think Scotstown, we'd all be kind of back in Scotstown. But in these wintry conditions and everything else, probably does maybe suit a Kilcoo a little bit more. But no, I'm going to go with Scotstown to come through. I think with their attacking talent, and as I said previously, I think you know, like they'll be putting it all on the line this week. I think they have to really, because as we said before with some of their players and everything else, look, I know some of the players will still be around. They'll still be backing around for the next couple of years. They're not going anywhere when it comes to next year, but you only get a certain amount of chances at this. And, you know, next year, Kilkerrin are going to be back in the mix. Newbridge are going to be back in the mix. Maybe Grangemesglen or Slot Neil come into it as well. So, I'm going to go with Scotstown by the bare minimum point.
And just to make this interesting, I'm going to agree with Aaron. So we're going to go 2 against 2 again. But I do agree with. I know an Arsenal and a Liverpool fan linking up. Who would have thought? But yeah, no, it's look, I do agree with the points that you lads have been saying about the defensive side of the game with Kilcoo and how they can make a game boring and just see the game out and everything like that. And I think weather is going to play a huge factor to this. But I do still like this Scotstown team. I do like the attack and flair of them. And like Aaron kind of said there, I feel like this is going to be the big game that they're going to absolutely be targeting for this season. And especially as well, look, and I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling that the winners of this could be targeting St. Bridget's to a small bit of a degree, thinking, okay, there's an opportunity there to get to an All-Ireland final. Because look, at the end of the day, the last couple of years, the Dublin side have been fairly strong in the championship. Obviously, Dingle, while it is their first time winning the Munster Championship, it's always a dangerous thing, a club going into their first All-Ireland series. We've seen it with Cúilín in the past. We've seen it with St. Thomas's in the past. You know, when you win your first provincial title, your first county title, it could just push you on to an absolute another level. So I'm going to go with Scotstown by just a bare minimum this weekend. Maybe, again, history could repeat itself. We could have Rory Beggan coming up with the winner again. You just don't know. But yeah, I am going to go with Scotstown to win this game. And half of us are going to look stupid come the end of Saturday evening, come around 9 o'clock Saturday evening. But we're just going to have to wait and see. I suppose before we get on to mentioning the rest of the games this weekend, there was one thing I wanted to bring up with you lads, and that is the RTE Sportsperson of the Year award. And this year, David Clifford is in the mix for his unbelievable season with Kerry. I know, Matthew, you and I last year on your podcast discussed it, saying, is it probably going to be a lot more difficult for GA players to win, you know, Personality of the Year or, you know, Sportsperson of the Year for these types of awards? And especially when you look at it this year with the likes of Rory McIlroy in there, I think he's probably the outright favourite to win it. This year, obviously, you have Troy Parrott, who had his absolutely unbelievable year, the Healy's and everybody in the running tracks as well. But for David Clifford, I mean, it speaks volumes of the year that he had, that he's been nominated for Sports Personality of the Year.
It does, yeah, but it's a very, very difficult award to win. And I remember a few years ago, Clifford, I think, would have been definitely up there in 2022, I think, when he had that final with the ding-dong battle with Shane Walsh. I thought that year was the year where a GA player was going to win it, because he was absolutely brilliant. And even 2023, when obviously they fell short of Dublin, maybe that year could have been the year as well. But you look at the talent this year, obviously, the likes of Rory McIlroy. Like, Rory McIlroy is the favourite to win Sport Personality of the Year in the BBC over in the UK. So, like, if he's the favourite there, he's going to win it here. It's as simple as that. You know, there could be a situation where he doesn't win the BBC Personality of the Year and he wins the RTE one. It'll be a scant consolation. It could be that, to be honest with you. But yeah. Look, to be honest with you, before the nominees were actually announced and before the BBC things were announced, actually, my eyes were towards the likes of Sarah Healy and Kate O'Connor because of what they did in the Europeans. Yeah. I thought that was sensational, in fairness. Kate O'Connor especially winning the silver medal. Obviously, Healy winning the gold was absolutely sensational for them, and Irish athletics has definitely gone up a level, in fairness. So I wouldn't have said Clifford for that, even though Clifford still scored, what was it, 11 goals, 92 points, Ross League and Championship. Like, if you're talking about like perfection in sport, that's it. But David Clifford topped all 4 lists in terms of from play, overall, everything in Gaelic football across the board. But the thing is, and I know we're knocking Gaelic games and things like that over this, it is an amateur sport. And when you look at others like Troy Parrott and like Rory McIlroy, they're professional athletes. Like, that's just a known fact and all that. But look, it is very difficult for Gaelic Games players to win the RT Sportsperson of the Year award. Only 2 players from Gaelic Games has ever done it. Sean O'Halpine in 2005 and Henry Sheffield in 2006. It is very, very hard to do. And you need to have, like, ironically enough, a David Clifford type year to win the Sportsperson of the Year award. but you need another sport person or another few to drop the ball. And I think you have to celebrate other sports as well and how well we have done. Like, you could make a case, like in any other year, you could make a case for Troy Parrott winning it. You could make a case for Kate O'Connor winning it, or Sarah Healy. It's just the fact that Rory McIlroy won the Grand Slam in golf, and he won the Masters. You can't really complain over him winning it at all. But it is very, very hard. I'd love to get, I know me and Shane, myself and yourself, Liam, talked about this on my show, Gaelic Stats, but last year when Clifford was nominated. But I'd love to get Seamus and Aaron's views on this. What does a Gaelic Games player have to do to break that stranglehold in winning the award? Obviously, this year probably not going to be your considering Rory McIlroy's year, but be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think his year this year was really, really strong. I think that I honestly think he has a great chance of definitely being on the podium, like being in the top 3. I do agree with what you said. I think the year that Rory McIlroy had, winning the Ryder Cup as well with Team Europe, and then winning the Masters and everything, like he had a fairy tale year, and he had a year where like it all kind of culminated for him and the fairy tale story happened. Obviously as well, the whole nation is riding high on to Troy Parrott and everything like that, and what he did for us in the qualification rounds there only recently gone by. So I wouldn't rule him out winning it last minute because of, you know, just how much goodwill will be behind that. And then obviously the achievements of the like Kate O'Connor and everything, like there's a lot of good people up for it. But the reality is as well, it's not just the scoring tallies that Clifford put up. It was the fact that he was their absolute leader, their absolute captain going. He was first man over the trenches, like, and he was called out on RTE, like, we need all the Kerry fans to travel with us for the Armagh game. And then he led from the front in that game. He got the crucial goal then against Tyrone, and in the All-Ireland final, he was spectacular. He was the reason, the primary reason that they won the All-Ireland. I think you take him out, and I know that Roddy was saying we were being disrespected, we're not a one-man team, everything like that. They're not a one-man team. But I still think without David Clifford, you don't win that All-Ireland. And I'm not saying that you're a one-man team. I think you take Michael Murphy out of that Donegal team, I don't think Donegal would have got to the All-Ireland final. I think once you have fantastic players, your team gets a hell of a lot better. And David Clifford had one of the best years I've ever seen in Gaelic football. He had a year that before this year, my stance was, yeah, he's the most talented player I've ever seen, and he'll probably be the greatest of all time when he finishes, but I don't think he's the greatest of all time now. And after this year, now I do think he is the greatest of all time. That's how good a year he's had. So I think I'd say honest to God, I'd say he'll finish second behind McIlroy.
Interesting. Aaron, would you agree, or do you feel like over the next, it's going to take something like kind of the boys were saying there, an absolute spectacular like what Clifford has had this year, and for a few other sports people to fall off, or do you just feel like it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to get a lot harder for, at the end of the day, amateur athletes to be winning this award?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, really. I think it's just the who does the voting actually for the award? Does anyone know?
Not sure, to be honest. So, yeah, is it RT judges or something?
I think it could be RT judges. Probably,
okay. Yeah, I think it's just this. You know, it's just the sheer scale that, like, Rory McIlroy, you know, like in terms of across the board, across a global scale, that's always going to get a bit more recognition, a bit of traction as well. You know, I think with these awards as well, it does boil down to how many people are speaking about these type of things, how many people are sharing what's going on, and obviously, you know, we're big GA fans, and we've done a huge amount of work promoting the games and everything else. But the reality is, it's not on the same scale as probably Rory McIlroy. In I wouldn't be a big golf fan now personally, but I would imagine across a global scale, that's probably a bit bigger. Just in terms of a global audience, and then that's just facts. That's just how it is. You know, obviously the Gaelic games at the highest level is played in Ireland. I know it is played across in other countries as well, but generally speaking, the majority of viewers are people who are either living here or, Irish people abroad or whatever it might be. And then, like, especially after what Troy Parrott did as well, so yeah, it's probably one of them things. Look, obviously there have been GA people that have won it in the past, so probably is a combination of factors that need to happen. I don't know if, like it needs to be on a bigger. I know with Clifford with the McKeever sports deal and everything else, the brand is sort of becoming bigger and bigger. I don't know if that's something that needs to happen, where like Clifford's brand is like so big that by default he nearly has to win it at some point. So it'd be great to see him win it. Look, I think he's definitely going to be in the mix. I'd agree with Seamus as well. I think he's probably number 2. You know, like I know obviously we're big Troy Parra admirers and everything else, but that was kind of like a very brief kind of couple of moments that obviously happened within a week, whereas Clifford did it for the entire year. But look, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if we can get to the World Cup, then if Rory McIlroy wins it or someone else, I think we need to hand it to Troy Parrish possibly for getting us to the US for next summer. Before we wrap this up and we all start becoming delusional, if we've reached an hour and 15, so we might start getting delusional at this point. We'll have to wait and see. But there are other games that are taking place this weekend. So I suppose looking at the football championship first, in the Leinster Intermediate Football Championship final that's taking place this Sunday, it is Sallins taking on Clare in the final in the intermediate, and in the Leinster Junior Club Football Final we'll have Grange Nolven versus the Fighting Cocks in the Junior Football Championship final. Moving over to ladies football alongside the senior final that's taking place, intermediate final between Caltracoons and Knockbride is taking place on Saturday at 2 p.m. and at 2 p.m. on Sunday we have Cromain versus Muckalee in the All-Ireland Junior Final as well. And from a Camogie perspective, on Saturday in the Junior Final we have Virginie Oga, I hope I pronounced that right, I hope I haven't butchered that, versus St. Dominic's on Sunday. That's at 2 p.m. And then the All-Ireland Intermediate Final, which is taking place just before the Senior Final on Sunday between Ballincollig of Cork versus Camross of Laois. Thankfully and very happily to say I'll be commentating on this game on Midlands 103 alongside Cúilín Whelan, so very much looking forward to that. From your perspective, lads, any one of those games that jump out to you before we wrap this up?
I suppose the LGFA Junior Final between Cromain of Kerry and Muckalee of Kilkenny. We talked about St. Ergnat being one of the stories, potentially one of the stories if they do beat Kilkerrin Clonberne and Aaron's prediction does come true. But for me, I think this Muckalee story, I'm so invested in it. It's really, really good, in fairness, not just for Muckalee, but for Kilkenny LGFA. And the way they're trying to build LGFA in that county, football's kind of the poor relation, I would say, to Camogie and hurling in Kilkenny. It's very, very hard to get traction. Obviously, in the men's football, they aren't even in the National Football League. And that's something that needs to be probably fixed in the next few years. With the LGFA, they're in the little National League. Kilkenny are in the little National League. And yes, they're getting pumpings nearly every week to sides like Sligo or whoever will do good in Division 4. Like, I think they got pumpings for Man and Antrim in the past year, which wasn't good for them. But this club run by Muckalee will rise the county fourfold. It's brilliant to see. Obviously, you have Emma Lawler, who's one of the main players for the Kilkenny LGFA team. You have a couple of Camogie players in there as well. Edwina Keane, who's retired Kilkenny Camogie player, and Kate Nolan, who's a very good Camogie player for Kilkenny, is actually corner forward on this Muckalee team as well. So it's great to see Kilkenny Camogie players try to rise the profile of Kilkenny LGFA as well. So yeah, I think that's going to be my pick of the games of the week. And I do think if Muckalee managed to win the All-Ireland on top of Leinster, I think it has to go down. As I know it's low down the ladder, but I think it still has to go down on a number of factors as probably one of the achievements of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it'd be interesting to see if they can go and win that final come Sunday afternoon, and there'll be some celebrations in Kilkenny if that does happen. So that is the podcast for another Thursday evening. My thanks to everyone who tuned in this evening and left a comment as well. It's a very, very intriguing weekend that we have ahead of us. My thanks to Matthew, to Seamus and to Aaron, as always, for jumping on. We'll be back again Sunday night to look back on the weekend's games and to see which one of us is going to look stupid after some of our predictions in this episode. But until then, thanks a million for watching. Make sure to check out all the lads' channels as well, and their various channels, and to make sure to listen to this on Spotify as well as to checking out the Gaelic Statsman page for all your latest news, because, well, he's really saving us this season with the fixtures and the results and the news and everything like that. So thanks a million for watching. We'll be back again Sunday night. Until then, ta-ra. Instinct, baby.